It's The Herd on ESPN Radio. Wherever you may be, however you may be listening, thanks for making us part of your day. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests via the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Simulcast on ESPN. Yes, sir. Yeah. Greg Cosell, meat sandwich. Daryl Moose Johnson on the Cowboys. Comedian Frank Caliendo last hour. Listen, one of the things that I'm fascinated by, and I'm not sure why, I'm not a real tradition guy. I like some traditions, But, I just like new stuff. I like new music, new food. I like new stuff. That doesn't mean I don't like a hamburger. That doesn't mean I don't like some classics, classics. I go to new places every year on vacation. I like new places. I like new stuff, a lot. Probably more than traditional stuff. But what's really happening out there in this world is really fascinating. Technology is changing everything. Don't need the post office as much anymore. We see it with music, albums and CDs. Bye-bye. Now it's all digital downloads. Bookstores. Don't need them. Go to Amazon.com, same-day delivery. Technology is changing everything. Not only do you have to get things to people more quickly, and if you don't like newspapers, they can't deliver the news as quickly. It doesn't matter if your quality is better. Newspapers are better than Twitter. Newspapers are smarter than Twitter, but Twitter gets stuff quickly. Good restaurants are better than fast food, but fast food gets it to you quickly. Sales are way up. Other restaurants flat. The reality is our society, it's not always quality now. People want stuff and they want it quickly. And I'll give you an example. For as profoundly popular as American Idol was, it was the number one TV show for about a decade. Not many of those people were stars. Because the problem was, unless you were Carrie Underwood attractive and talented, and of all the guys and gals that won, if 30, 50, 100, like 2 have been stars. Because after you won American Idol, you couldn't deliver your music to the market quickly enough. Take 6 to 8 months to get your music out. Yet on a show that's not even close to as popular, most of you have never heard it or seen it, America's Next Designer, the day after the winner won the show, their stuff was in stores the next day. Delivered. A lot more hit designers than musical hits, even though one show was more popular. Can you deliver stuff quickly to the market? Are you fast? What's your pace? What's your tempo? Golf is dying in America. Dying. Yesterday, Dick's Sporting Goods laid off 500 golf pros. It's 20% of their business. Golf Digest yesterday announced no more magazine. Online only. Been around for 50 years. 408 golf courses closed last year, and 400,000 people quit golf last year. Tiger, my friends, was the duct tape. Golf majors down 30%, non-majors down 50 to 60%. Listen to this quote. This is from Mark King, former president of TaylorMade, recently named president of Adidas North America Golf. Listen to this. He goes, every macro indicator we've been looking at for 20 years, rounds played, women coming into the game, all these things we tracked, there's less people playing. Young people now entering the game after high school, 18 to 30-year-olds, down 35%. I don't like where the game's going. It's dying right in front of our eyes. Tiger was the duct tape. It's not quick enough. You can't ask dads now to go spend 7 hours on a Saturday and Sunday away from their family and kids. It's not fast enough. Now, I'm older. I like new technology. I don't live for it. I'm not online all day. My kids, teenage daughter, they're online all the time. Everything, all the apps. I'm not, so I can sit through a major. I watched Rory McIlroy for 2.5 hours. I loved it, but I'm 50. 20 and 30-year-olds, they're not dumber. It's just new technology. If we grew up with the technology, had our face in an iPad all day, we'd expect stuff too. Look around. It is amazing. That's why I said the NFL Red Zone was brilliant. Even though the game is fast and full of action, NFL saw it and said, we've got to make it faster and faster and faster and faster. That's why the NFL loves the no huddle. More plays, more plays, more plays, more plays, more plays. The no huddle, that's really why the league likes it. It gives you and I 32 more plays a game. More action, more action, more action. It is amazing what is happening to golf. Yesterday, 2 major golf distribution centers basically said, it's dying. Dick's Sporting Goods, it's dying. We're getting out of the business. Golf Digest, we can't sell our magazine. It's what I've said about soccer. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. There's no stoppages. It's under 2 hours. Even in overtime, you go to penalty kicks, it's over in 7 minutes. 45% growth, World Cup to World Cup. It's basically hockey with diversity. If hockey had soccer's diversity, it would be growing at a faster pace, but it's not. Most of us don't skate, overwhelmingly white in a browning country. We know those to be true. Last night on ESPN 2, 9:15 starting time, a soccer exhibition between Kansas City and Manchester City got a .24. Not a big number. That would beat a baseball game on ESPN 2. Now, the baseball game on ESPN 1 got a .4. That was 2 major markets in a game that counted. San Francisco Phillies, San Francisco, good baseball team. In a soccer exhibition, ESPN 2, a .24. Starting at 9:15, small market, British team. It's fast, 2 hours, boom, done, over. Soccer stars tend to be celebrities. Baseball players, often in America, don't speak our language. Games are slower. I've said with baseball, the biggest problem is the inventory is too big and the games take too long. 162, 3.5 hours. Who's watching? Average age World Series, 52. So I thought yesterday in golf, and we've seen this our entire life, nothing stays the same. Milwaukee used to be bigger and more vibrant than Miami. Same for Detroit. It changed. We used to go to the post office. We used to buy albums. We used to go to bookstores. We used to watch horse racing and boxing. Yesterday in golf was an unbelievable indicator of how this country is changing. As technology use among 20 and 30-year-olds rises, golf concurrently erodes. Literally at the exact same pace. I think Golf World Magazine, by the way, is going online. Golf World Magazine, which has been around since the 40s. First published in the 40s. So I saw that yesterday, and both those stories came down, and I was like, wow, we are now I told you, I think Rory McIlroy, to me, feels like a star. To me, I watched him, I'm all in. I like watching golf majors. I love watching the British. I love watching the Masters. I'm all in on. This is not my opinion. But I watched those numbers. Rory, down 35%. Tiger was duct tape. So popular, so profoundly great. There'll never be another one, especially for a 10-year period. He was duct tape. Also yesterday on the show, Greg Cosell in 45 Minutes, that there was I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy, and I'm not into it. Like the Bigfoot people. There's always a gigantic hole in every conspiracy theory that the theorists just don't want to talk about, like the Bigfoot people. How come we've never found one dead one? I mean, if they're out there and they're all over the world, why can't we find a dead one? Every other animal dies. Bigfoot doesn't die? Kind of a hole in your theory. They disappear into the ether? They disintegrate? There's quicksand they all fall into? Kind of puts a big hole in your theory. We've never found a dead one. Well, I got a footprint. Okay, that means it's around here. It's 8 feet tall. Where is it? The corpses just go invisible. It's like Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like Predator. They're just invisible. They make noises, but you can't see them. The conspiracy theory, Bill Simmons threw a conspiracy theory out there yesterday, and it's one of the few I absolutely believe to be true, and I'll address that. Thousands of people seeking home security get ripped off every day. You're stuck writing huge checks, long-term deals, no way out. It's like robbery. There's a better way now to protect your home. Simply Safe Home Security. No contract, under $15 a month, which is amazing, and 24/7 protection. Okay, $15 a month is less than a third of what most security companies charge. Visit simplysafecolin.com. They'll give you an additional 10% off. That's 10% off the $15 a month. Simplysafecolin.com. Simplysafecolin.com. We span the globe next.
It's summer.
Talking about how I love to watch golf majors, and I watch the British Open. And then I saw the ratings for it, and I was like, oh, my God, it got like a 2.5. The World Cup was getting fives and sixes in the afternoon on Tuesday between an African team and a European team. I mean, it's like I'm a holdout. I love watching golf majors. The British Open, to me, I can't take my eyes off it. But I am clearly a holdout. But I'm 50. I'm not into the technology like everybody else. I got an iPad. I've got a Twitter. But I've never been into MySpace. Didn't like it. Never into Facebook. I don't live online. So it's not my opinion. I love watching Rory. I think he's a star. He's not Tiger. But I'm telling you, if you can't ramp it up, man, you are in trouble in this society. From newspapers to a post office, you're in big trouble. Golf is dying in front of our eyes. It's incredible what's happening to it. It is plunging in popularity. Let's span the globe. We do it every day at this time. We call it our daily sports page.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sports. Spanning the globe. Dallas.
All right, Cowboys open training camp. Our friend Janine Edwards is there. All right, what is the hot story? Romo off the surgery. What did Jerry Jones say about Jason Garrett's job security yesterday, Janine?
Well, that's kind of, that was something that perked everybody's ears up when Jerry Jones unequivocally said this is not a make-or-break year for Jason Garrett. Now, obviously, you know, it's his son-in-law wants to support him. He wants to show support. But there was not a hint of hesitation when he said that. You know, he didn't say, well, you know, we've got to see how things go. He's squarely putting his support behind Jason Garrett and wants it to look like he's going to give this guy every opportunity and every tool to turn this thing around and to be successful. So that was interesting. A lot of people took note of that comment.
How about Tony Romo, 34 off back surgery? Janine, are they taking extra precautions within this camp?
Well, they really are, Colin. And you know what? They're taking extra precautions with everybody. I don't know if you remember, I was at minicamp, and I was reporting on the yoga classes that they're making them take now and the ballet bars that they put in the locker room because they're making them stretch a certain way and they're doing different types of warm-ups. They've changed their whole philosophy and approach as to trying to prevent injuries. And Jason Garrett actually eliminated the conditioning tests before training camp because he felt that they were potentially contributing to soft tissue injuries. So all of that being said, yes, they are taking precautions with Tony Romo. They did that in minicamp as well. And to quote Jason Garrett from yesterday, he said, he's ready in all aspects, but we will continue to evaluate him day by day. We're going to monitor his throws. We only want him taking quality reps. We're going to be very thoughtful in how we go about his camp.
Good stuff, Janine.
So, yep.
Appreciate you stopping by.
Okay, Colin. Have a good day.
New England.
All right, Gronk cleared to play by the doctors. Mike Reese covers the Patriots. All right. I mean, you know, there's been some speculation, Mike, that, you know, he may not go all the days in camp. What is the update on how much Gronk, when he's there, how much he'll practice going forward?
Well, Colin, I'm out here at practice right now, and I'm going to give you a visual of something I just see right here within the last minute on the practice field. You have your tight ends gathered together, Rob Gronkowski holding a blocking pad, and another tight end really thrusting right into him with great force, and Gronkowski holding his ground. Now, this is the Patriots' first practice at training camp. We know that they can't be in full pads for the first 2 days. The first full pads practice will be Saturday, and at that point we'll really have a better feel for how much Gronk can do. But right now, Colin, at this point, you know, about 30 minutes into the Patriots' first training camp practice, Gronk is doing everything.
This is the most talented defense, it seems to me, since the Super Bowl winning teams. Is that understood? I mean, my eyeballs tell me the acquisitions, the transitions, I think it's really a good defense finally. Do you feel that?
I do feel that way, Colin, and here's the way to look at it. Of possible 11 starting players on defense, you have 7 first-round picks. And, I mean, there's a reason those players are picked in the first round. I know some are from as far back as 2004 when you pick a Vince Wilfork. That's because they're usually good players in the first round. And really, here in New England, here's the thing. It's all about Darrelle Revis. You know, I think that's the difference maker. All the other players are good, but you want guys that are difference-making players. I think Revis and his addition has made this a unique year here in New England, where I think more people are excited about the defense than the Tom Brady-led offense, and it hasn't really been like that, Colin, in recent years with this team.
Good stuff, man. Thanks.
Thanks, Colin.
Kansas City.
All right, you fantasy football fans. Jamal Charles, late to camp. Adam Teicher, ESPN NFL Nation reporter. All right, how much is he worth? I mean, what are they offering? How much is he worth? How valuable, Adam, is he to their offense?
Well, as far as his worth, I think we can all agree that he was worth more than the $3.9 million that he would have been paid this year. I mean, that was, I think 13th to 14th among NFL running backs this year. And he's well beyond the 13th to 14th back. But, the Chiefs, this deal had to be inevitable because the Chiefs they needed him. They're lost without Jamal Charles. They've tried to build up their offense and prepare for the day when Jamal Charles is either injured or starts to lose his skill or, even hold out. But they're just not there yet. I mean, they have some nice complementary players, but the guy who for him is Jamal Charles, and this would have been a totally different team without him.
Yeah. I am shocked by how little Vegas likes Kansas City. And I've always said Vegas, to some degree, is truth serum. They're in it to make money, so all they care about is, here's a number, here's how many games. I kind of like the team. I think they're limited at quarterback. What is the gut feeling around the Chiefs right now going into the season?
Well, remember this. They lost, including the playoff game, they lost 6 of their last 8 games. And that's a little bit, that should be a red flag about this season to a lot of people. It is to some extent to me. But I agree with you. I think the Chiefs, I don't know how strong of a playoff contender they'll be this year, but they've got too many good players to fall off the map. I mean, I think that 8-9 range is probably a reasonable expectation for the Chiefs, but it wouldn't surprise me to see them to go beyond that as well.
Good stuff. Appreciate it, Adam.
Hey, anytime.
That was Spanning the Globe.
To bring you the constant variety of sports.
The Herd on ESPN Radio.
Tim Kokoski emails me. Of the 408 golf courses that closed, I can almost guarantee that the huge majority of them lost out to a better course in the area. False. On average, about 30 courses are opening a year to 50 around the country, and 400 are closing. It's dying, Tim. It's not a debate between you and I. There's real metrics. Dick's Sporting Goods getting out of the golf business. To a large degree, they can't make money. You can't blame Dick's Sporting Goods. They can't make money at it. And by the way, this is not a criticism. I like golf. I don't play it a lot. I don't have the time for it, but I have friends who golf. I love watching the majors. I'm not anti-golf. I talk golf on this network, maybe not as much as Scott Van Pelt, but more than most people. I like golf. I like the majors. I love the British, love the Masters, love the U.S. Open, love the Ryder Cup. I'm not anti-golf at all. I'm just giving you the numbers. Okay, do what you want with them. NFL suspending Ravens running back Ray Rice. 2 games. Suspension expected to be announced today, according to Adam Schefter. Coming up next, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but Bill Simmons is right. Next. It's amazing in society that Josh Gordon will miss the entire season potentially because he smoked pot. But Ray Rice can knock a woman unconscious and he'll just miss 2 games. It's incredible. There's things in society I just don't get. And, I'm not going to go on some soapbox here, but, violence against women is just not even tolerable at any level. And even the National Football League, there's a couple games. You smoke a joint, hey, out of the league. Denver and Seattle teams, legal in the state. I'm not saying you should, but it's disappointing with the NFL. It's disappointing with Ray Rice. It's disappointing in the NFL. It's disappointing with the Ravens. It's disappointing. I say this a lot. Like the Bigfoot crowd. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. There's no Bigfoot. Okay? If there was Bigfoot, then they would be, dead Bigfoots all over the land, right? You'd have dead Bigfoots, but there's no dead Bigfoots because there's no Bigfoot, okay? And I had some Bigfoot loser tweet me like 5 minutes ago. He said, the reason there's no dead big feet or Bigfoot, are they plural, big feets, Bigfoots? The reason there aren't out there is because, like people, they bury their own. Oh, shut up. I mean, go just literally drive on black ice and hit a telephone pole. Stop it. Some Bigfoot loser emailed me. Yeah, they bury their own just like people. Yeah, that's why when you go to Home Depot, you see those Bigfoot buying shovels and stuff. Yeah, every time I go to Lowe's, I see a Bigfoot family back there buying like shovels, trash bags and stuff, burying their young. You're stupid, Bigfoot person. The late Mitch Hedberg, the comedian, had the great line, I think the problem with Bigfoot is they're blurry. That's why you never get a shot. They're actually blurry. So let's get the show's going off the rails here with those conspiracy dorks. The other one was Patrick Ewing. Conspiracy people have these big holes in their conspiracy, but they just don't want to address them. There was the frozen envelope theory with Patrick Ewing. Well, no commissioner gets paid based on what teams win. Roger Goodell's getting a raise, and the Steelers and the Cowboys are in the tank, and the Colts are fantastic. What does that matter? David Stern, for most of his commissionership, the Knicks were no good, the Celtics were no good, the Clippers were no good, the Sixers were no good, Washington was no good, but Indiana was pretty good, and so was San Antonio. So he didn't get paid based on small market, major market. Like David Stern, who was a young seven-figure, brilliant executive, would put his career on the line so the Knicks won. He doesn't get paid if the Knicks win. And he wouldn't do that. He's smart. Smart people wouldn't do that. But yesterday, Bill Simmons came on the show and said, Kevin Love to the Cavs, my conspiracy theory is this has all been worked out. And he started talking about the letter LeBron wrote and that he didn't mention certain names.
You look at that letter he wrote, and he had at least 2 days to write that letter. I mean, you could talk about another conspiracy that they might have started working on that from that Sunday for that Friday. Yeah. They had at least 24 hours. He mentioned all the young players he was excited to play with. Wiggins and Bennett were conspicuously left out of that letter. And it jumped out at you the first moment you read it. You're like, why isn't Wiggins in that? Like, he's excited to play with Deion Waiters, but not Andrew Wiggins? That's weird. And then they said afterwards, it was an oversight. First of all, I don't believe in oversights when you're spending that much time writing a letter and mentioning young players from a team. And then also the fact that the two guys who were conspicuously left out of that letter are now the two guys involved in this, rumored, reported, negotiated Cavs-Timberwolves trade. It makes me think that deal was already kind of agreed on.
Absolutely agree with him. I don't even think it rises to a conspiracy theory. Is I believe LeBron and Dan Gilbert have made up their mind to go get Kevin Love, and Kevin Love knows about it and has been contacted. Everybody's represented by the same 7 agents. It's like television and radio. We're all represented by either IMG or CAA or everybody's my agent's got 7 guys at this company, maybe 9. We're all rep by the same people. People talk. I know what this guy makes, that guy makes, this guy makes. I know. I can find out. Everybody talks. Same in the NBA. It's 7 agents doing all the business. Listen, Dan Gilbert and LeBron met for 4 hours in Miami, according to Adrian Wojnarowski of Yahoo. 4 hours. Cod takes 20 minutes to eat. They apologize. It takes 15. Even Dan Gilbert admitted that's what it took. Okay, where the other 3.5 hours go? Planning the future. Sitting down. What do you want? Who do you want to play with? So I absolutely believe that stars talk, stars collaborate, stars plan, and this thing, the only thing that's in the way of it, what if Minnesota isn't willing to do it now because they want to see how good Andrew Wiggins is? Because my belief is Minnesota wants to see if Andrew Wiggins can play. But that's very dangerous for the T-Wolves because if he can play, they may give Minnesota less in the trade and say, he's a star, you can see it. We're not going to give you that first-round pick and Wiggins. But if you looked at all the things that were rumored to be true, Mike Miller and Ray Allen will follow LeBron, it's happening. Ray Allen basically is now going to join the Cavs, it's been reported. Wiggins and Anthony Bennett, conspicuous in their absence in the letter, now are on the trading block, according to sources. And Kevin Love, rumored to potentially be interested, now is interested. And various reports say it's going to happen eventually. And Kevin Love wants it to happen. So this is, I'm not even sure it rises to a conspiracy theory. But there's enough circumstantial evidence right now to get a warrant from a judge if this was Law and Order. So I think it's going to happen. Check out SportsCenter's training camp coverage, all 32 teams, live today with the Broncos, Cowboys, Redskins, Bengals. Tomorrow, it's New England, Seahawks, Niners. Good stuff next few days. I mean, we're ramping up. We are ramping up. I led the show talking about all these societal changes we're seeing, and you can literally see the concurrent rise of technology use among 20 and 30-year-olds and decline of golf play 20 to 30-year-olds. Not my opinion. These are all metrics. Even people who ran TaylorMade, Dick's Sporting Goods, golf magazines, they're all reporting it. Massive closures in the business. And I believe it's just the pace of society. The same reason golf is dying is the same reason soccer is growing. And who, by the way, doesn't see the soccer growth or the golf decline? 50-year-old white males. The same guy that's like, no, it's not. Dude, Detroit used to be bigger than Miami. It's not anymore. So was Milwaukee. It's not anymore. We used to go to post office. We used to buy albums. We used to go to bookstores. Technology's changed everything. Fast food sales up. Why? Get it quickly. Twitter, net worth up. Why? Quickly. Newspapers, great stuff. Slow. Decline. It's just, I wish it wasn't true. I wish it wasn't true. I think golf's great. I like golfers. I like the analysts. I think majors are amazing. I love the Ryder Cup. I like even their international stuff. I love the Ryder Cup. Mike, you're in the herd. Go ahead.
Hey, Colin. Mike from Tampa, first-time caller. Love the show.
Thanks.
I'm down here and I'm noticing I agree with you completely as far as how golf is becoming very segmented into certain areas of the country where it's only going to be important. The Wall Street Journal came out with an article this morning talking about how millennials, are moving more towards yoga and running, and I see it myself. I just can't spend 6-7 hours on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon away from my wife and friends.
Yes.
To go and play. That's just exactly how it is. So, love to hear you talk.
Yeah.
Love to hear you talk more about it.
Mike, I'll do it. Thank you, Mike. From a personal level, here's the way it works. I have a young son, young daughter, and I married a woman with kids. I'm not going to bail on her for 6 hours. I'm not bailing on her. Come on. Our dads are different than we are as dads. I'm not bailing on my wife. I'm not bailing on my kids. I want to see my kids. The divorce rate's up. I don't live with my kids. They're right across the street, basically, a mile away, but I want to see my kids. I want to hang out with my kids. I also have gotten more into jogging as I've gotten older because it takes me 45 minutes. I walk out my house, there's a reservoir next door, 45 minutes later, done working out for the day. I don't go to gyms as much. I don't do golf as much. Everything's got to be quicker. Now, that's just my personal life. Not everybody's the same. But I've noticed that even anecdotally, I'm not going to bail on my kid. My dad wasn't there perhaps for me. I want to be there for my kids. I'm not giving a golf course 7 hours. And it should be noted, among 20-year-olds, the unemployment rate's higher. Golf's expensive. So young people have less money, and golf is increasingly expensive. So culture changes. Just changes. Boxing used to be bigger. It's MMA basically eliminated it. I mean, boxing is just off the map. Nobody talks about it. When I first started in this business 15 years ago, I talked boxing all the time. You had a big fight like every 4 months. Tyson would fight 3 times a year. It was a lead story for a week. We want things to be simple, right? You can save me time, save me money, kind of stuff I get behind. That's why a lot of people are making the switch to Nature Box. They have revolutionized the way people are snacking. Okay? Here's why they're great. Delicious, good for you, and they're delivered to you for free. By the way, do I have it here? I just had an apple pie fig bar. Thank you. Really good. You're a family guy? Got a lot of snacks. Your kids eat them. Don't you want them to eat healthy? Nature Box features over 100 sweet, spicy, and savory snacks you won't find in stores. Go to naturebox.com/Colin. These are great. 50% off your first box. Try one box. Free shipping. You'll be hooked. naturebox.com/Colin. Enter the promo code Colin to get half off your first Nature Box. Naturebox.com/Colin. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. They have a name your price tool, coverage options. Check it out. Yeah, it was really interesting during the whole soccer kind of World Cup thing. I was really interested that so many people were fighting it. It's not here. Nobody cares. It's like, dude, it's here. It's working. The numbers are up. The metrics. It's just, you stop arguing it. It's funny how I think guys, too, maybe we're just not as good changing our habits. But you can see all the changes happening in sports. You can see them all happening. The metrics don't lie. Subscriptions don't lie. It's happening. Even the NFL's got some holes, but their holes are better holes than other people's holes. But when I say this about soccer, nobody cares. They do. The numbers show it. Participation, FIFA sales, merchandise, ratings. And the next big step is the MLS being funded by ESPN and Fox, which they now are with TV contracts, able to afford international players. That's going to take about 3 or 4 years. More international players will come over here, a few stars. We've already seen Beckham come over. The Brazilian goalie was from Toronto, played for the Toronto team. We're seeing the attendance now for MLS stadiums have more fans than seats. It's just going to take time, but it's not going away. It is now a quickly growing financial profit center. And you'll get these guys, you're wrong. We work in the metrics business. I can tell you media companies who are in trouble, media companies who aren't. My company doesn't like me to rip other companies here. They just don't like it. But I can tell you certain traditional heavyweights in media that are not in good shape. Subscriptions are down. They're losing relevance. They're losing good writers. Their numbers are wobbly. They were late to the internet party. I don't need to name them because I bring people on the show from that company, but they're in trouble. It's not good. So there's just stuff happening in sports. And if you're slow like golf, you're in big trouble. If you're slow like baseball, where there's a convergence going on in America where we demand stuff quicker and baseball games are now longer. That's a toxic jambalaya. That is a bad convergence. That's a bad weather system. You know what I mean? That's like, we want stuff fast. The game is now getting slower. That's why when baseball gets a new commissioner, job one is ramp this puppy up. I don't care if you widen the strike zone. Forget the arm epidemic, which is another big issue. But between the arm epidemic, between the defensive shifts, between everybody throwing 100 miles an hour, I went to a baseball game Saturday, Mets-Padres, and I love going to baseball games. I'm going to a Cub game next Tuesday, and I love going to Wrigley. It's my favorite sporting venue in the world. I love Wrigley. I'm singing the 7th inning stretch, which will be an abomination. And then I'm going to a Yankee game during Jeter, September 7, 8, 9, one of those. I spend more money on baseball than any other sport. I go to baseball games. But my son said to me in the 4th inning of the Mets-Padres, it was a really cute little moment. Sometimes your kids say stuff, and my son's sitting there, and he's having a churro, San Diego Mets, and I'm sitting next to a bunch of Mets fans. And they're the identical twin brothers. You ever heard of, like, Mike Stubbs, that Mike Stubbs place? They're the guys that own it out in San Diego. Great guys. All Mets fans were talking about all their young pitchers. I really had a great time. But my son said something to me that was really, kids are just they have no agenda. They're not Republican. They're not Democrat. They just tell you what they see. And my son's sitting next to me in the 3rd, 4th inning. And we're having a great time. I got a big old fat beer. Kids are eating ice cream. Guys next to me are great. I'm having a great time. And my son says, Dad, I love you, and I'm having a really good time. But the thing about baseball is nobody ever hits the baseball. And I was like, wow, that's what he sees. With the defensive shifts, increasing number of pitchers throwing 100, special amphetamines out, substances out, HGH out, just the ball's not in play much. And my little 8-year-old son, he goes, I'm having a great time, and he was, but they don't hit the ball much. And it was funny because after the game, he goes, Dad, I remember 3 players, David Wright, I think it was Steph Smith for San Diego, and Daniel Murphy. Hey, so he loved the game. You know, he loved the whole ice cream thingy and the scoreboard thingy, but he said they don't hit the ball much. That new commissioner, he's got to figure that out. Even Tom Verducci, Buster Olney, the great baseball guys, Peter Gammons, inactivity is way up. So you got to fix that puppy. Because young people, you're not giving them activity, you're not giving them offense, you're not giving them stuff, you're not giving them movement. They are out. They're Seacrest out. They're gone. People are brutally honest at 8. Then they become a Democrat or a Republican, and then they have an agenda. Everything's politicized the rest of their life. Like, everybody's great until, 19 years old. Then they understand politics. Then everybody's a headache. That's the way it works. Until 19, everybody can have just a normal conversation. Nobody takes sides. You get honesty. It's the Herd. It's the Herd on ESPN Radio, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests via the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Simulcast on ESPN. We brought him on 2 years ago, and now he's a regular during the football season. And one of the things I was saying last hour, if you can't even pick up an American newspaper, you can't turn on a TV network. Everybody's got a political agenda. They're left, they're right. You just can't get objective opinions. It's very difficult to get them, even in the sports business. If a guy lives in Alabama, well, the Alabama car dealership is paying his salary. Everything is roll tide. It used to be that when you watch TV and radio and sports, you felt like you could just watch somebody who would give you a straight opinion, and it didn't come with a qualifier. And I find Greg Cosell to be as objective as anybody in our business, because Greg is not necessarily a reporter who has sources he has to grease. He watches film, he has for 30 years, and he gives you information which is educated and comes without a filter and doesn't come with any qualifiers. So now that I've sucked up to him, Greg Cosell, 30 years, on Twitter as well. How are you, my friend? How was your brief off season?
Colin, it's great to be back, by the way. I really appreciate it. And here at NFL Films, we don't seem to have an off season. We just have a non-season. And I'm actually been grinding away on the Greatest Games series, which I do one every summer for ESPN, of course. So I've been very focused on that. The Patriots' victory over the Panthers in Super Bowl 38.
Okay, I want to jump in on a couple of things. Jerry Jones said yesterday, hey, our defensive personnel is better now than it has been for years. What do you see on film from last year and the new players?
I would have a hard time agreeing with that. I'm not surprised Jerry would say that. I think everybody's in the honeymoon period right now. I mean, clearly this is a defense that is primarily based on sort of the old cover 2, Tampa 2 principles, where you need your D-line to be your pass rushers. And right now, as you look now, they would have George Selvey and Jeremy Mincy as their starting defensive ends. They did draft DeMarcus Lawrence, but he's a rookie, obviously. So it's hard to view their D-line right now as a pass rush D-line as we sit here on July 24th.
Gronk is back with the Patriots. Now, they got to the AFC Championship without him, but is Brady operationally, mechanically with this offense, what does Gronk create that his fill-ins and backups don't?
Well, what Gronk creates is one-on-one matchups on the perimeter for wide receivers. And in the NFL, that's the best you can hope for. And then your wide receivers have to win one-on-one matchups. But Gronk creates that because you must control him between the hash marks. If you don't control Gronk between the hash marks, then you won't stop the Patriots' offense at all.
Darrelle Revis is now a Patriot. On film last year, was he still an elite corner in your opinion?
It was hard to judge him, Colin, because amazingly enough, Tampa did not play a lot of pure man coverage where they just lined him up and had him play press man. Now, that could have been a function of his injury. He's now a year removed. So it was hard to judge his man-to-man skills last year. I would bet being a year removed, he'll play a lot of press man. Bill Belichick has done a lot more of that in recent years. He did a lot of that with Aqib Talib, matching him up to the opponent's best receiver. I would think you would see that with Darrelle Revis this year in New England.
Greg Cosell joining us, 30 years watching film, NFL films. We looked last year, there's been a number historically that Peyton Manning under 40 degrees is not quite as good. And we know that's been reported that his grip on a football, it's sometimes in colder weather, as he's aged with the surgeries, perhaps not as good. When you look at all the film on Peyton, go back game 1 September to the end, was he the same quarterback at the end that he was early?
Yeah, look, everybody remembers the Super Bowl, which obviously he would say he didn't play well. Their offensive line was overmatched. And Peyton is... You know, it's funny. He's obviously a Hall of Fame player and a great, great quarterback. But there are certain games in which any quarterback, we've seen this over the years with Brady in certain playoff games, where the pressure is there and they're unable to perform at their highest level. They're uncomfortable in the pocket. Peyton was uncomfortable in the pocket in that game very early. But if you go a week or two before, when he beat New England, when he played San Diego, he played well. These discussions about Peyton Manning, Colin, I always struggle with them because and not you personally, but I don't know, what are we trying to say about Peyton Manning? I'm trying to figure that. We had this discussion last year, not only you and I, but many people. What are we trying to say? Are we trying to say he's not really a good quarterback? I don't know where we're going with this. The guy is easily one of the 2 or 3 best of all time, and you could easily make an argument, which some people do, that he's the best of all time.
Greg Cosell joining us. If I said, and there's probably more than this, but there's 3 levels of NFL talent. There's 7 or 8 teams that, Seattle would be in this group, San Francisco, with elite rosters. There's a lot of teams in the middle, and maybe there's 6 or 7 less talented teams on the bottom end. Using that as sort of our starting point, I'll throw out some teams. How good is the talent on the New York Giants, in your opinion, on tape?
I don't think they have elite talent by any means. I think their offensive line is a big, big question, but I think their new offensive scheme with Ben McAdoo, with more West Coast principles, more timing, rhythm, pass game, will help compensate for an offensive line, and it will also help, I think, Eli Manning be a better quarterback.
How about if I say, what about a team like Atlanta, which lost a lot of close games in a tougher division? How good is their overall roster, in your opinion?
I don't think their roster is very good right now, unless players who haven't done it in the past really improved dramatically this season. But I think you could look at the Falcons roster, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, and there are a ton of question marks. Keep in mind, they played last year with 2 free agent linebackers who are still listed as starters. Just to show you where they stand, they just signed Pat Anger within the last week. So they're just looking for players on defense. They're looking for competition.
All right, one more team. Let me throw this at you. All right, Giants, Atlanta. Okay, all right, here we go. Arizona.
Arizona's a pretty talented team. Now, a big question there will be with Darrell Washington out, because Darrell Washington is one of the best 3-4 movement inside linebackers in the NFL. So now they're going into camp, they're going to put in the second-year player who's a second-round pick last year, Kevin Minter. But that could be a significant drop-off. It will be a significant drop-off. Now, their O-line needs to be better, and they'll have 2 new players this year because they have Jared Valdir to play left tackle, and Jonathan Cooper, their number 1 pick, did not play at all last year. But I would think Arizona's roster, that's probably top 5-6 in the league.
Wow. Okay. See, now that's interesting. So what you're telling me is if their roster's top 5 or 6 in the league, in an increasingly no-huddle league where mobility for quarterbacks can be important, is Carson Palmer holding them back, or is he stabilizing them?
Well, that's an interesting question. Mobility is not necessarily the key factor in a no-huddle. What you're asking quarterbacks to do now is orchestrate the game at the line of scrimmage. Now, we can debate the value of mobility and what it ultimately means for a quarterback, but you're asking quarterbacks to orchestrate the game at the line of scrimmage. Carson Palmer is very good at that. Now, is he more of a statue than most? Yes, he is. And there are certain times where that's problematic. But those quarterbacks, Colin, will also wait longer in the pocket and make throws that quarterbacks who are mobile never get to. So it's a very fine balancing act. When you see on SportsCenter the big runs by the mobile quarterbacks, everybody gets excited. But what you don't see are balls that aren't thrown that should be thrown. And there's no statistic for that.
That's why I've always been confused if I should like RG3 or not. What does the tape say? Everybody, you love him or you don't. I'm mixed. I think he's talented, but I think he runs out of a lot of completions.
Well, that's fair. I think what Jay Gruden will do, and he talked about it in the offseason, is trying to make him a better pocket player. See, the problem with quarterbacks who run, and when I say problem, I don't mean it as a negative, but what they don't get to is they don't advance to the precision subtleties of playing quarterback from the pocket, which is still important in the NFL at certain times. It might be 4 times a game. It might be 6 times a game, depending on the game. But if you can't convert those plays, then you reach a certain point at quarterback. It doesn't mean you're a bad player, but you're going to have to make those throws at times from the pocket. And he's going to try to improve his pocket game, which last year was lacking.
That's good stuff, man. That's fantastic. I'm getting goosebumps on all this stuff. All right, now you're going to show up every week. What day, Vince, do we have? What day is it? Every Thursday you're going to be on our show this year. We might as well start this thing now. What's the point in waiting? Greg, we love having you on, man.
Colin, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's interesting. Arizona, one of the top 5 rosters in the NFL. Boy, is that division ridiculous. That's the thing about Michael Sam. Can he make the Rams? I mean, he's a pass rusher. Have you seen the Rams pass rush? Oh, I mean, that roster, it's funny. Here's the thing. Think how valuable quarterback is in this league. I mean, Arizona, top 5 roster. Why can't they win? Carson Palmer, not very mobile in a division with 3 pass rushes. Now, if you put Carson Palmer in a division like maybe the AFC East, where New England's pass rush has been tepid, Buffalo's hit and miss, Jets pretty good, Dolphins not necessarily, maybe Carson Palmer is a little more efficient. But when you have the Seahawks rush twice a year and the Niners rush twice a year and the Rams rush twice a year, is Carson Palmer's mobility a liability, his lack of mobility? So, these divisions are not equal. The AFC South is outside of the Colts, and I would even argue the Colts aren't a great roster. They have a great quarterback. But you look at the NFC West, I'll tell you something else. I'll tell you on the other side. If you rank the divisions, nobody disputes the NFC West is number 1. Okay, that's the SEC in college football. Let's not argue about it. But I'll tell you one that's surprisingly good and one that's surprisingly bad around the corner. Hey, if your everyday life, when you're living, right, you sometimes find yourself in a situation that makes you uncomfortable. Not if you're wearing Hanes T-shirts, underwear, and socks with revolutionary X-Temp technology. Keep your cool. Designed to respond to your body temp and speed evaporation. Keeps you dry and comfortable. Weather. Non-factor with Hanes X-Temp technology. Because when you're cool, you're comfortable. It's there for you when you find yourself in an uncomfortable moment. Hanes X-Temp. It's the Herd. This is non-sports, but it's an interesting story. There's in the television business, Meet the Press, I think is the longest running show in American TV. Meet the Press. It's been on forever, NBC. My dad watched it. I was a big Tim Russert fan. And David Gregory's taken over, and I have a friend of a friend who knows him. Very smart guy, really, really super smart guy. Not overly dynamic, and I'm a big believer that, and I've told people of this company, is that TV, radio, Twitter, and books, something different works for every one of them. Twitter's about being clever. Books are about being smart. Radio's about storytelling, and television's about being dynamic. You can almost find no shows in the history of American TV that have succeeded greatly that weren't dynamic. Either a dynamic writing crew, dynamic cast, dynamic star, dynamic storyline. The Wire had a dynamic storyline. Sopranos had dynamic stars. Television's about being dynamic. David Gregory's smart. I don't think he's very dynamic. It's not just about intelligence. It's not about looks. A lot of good-looking people don't work on TV, and a lot of smart people don't work. So apparently David Gregory, according to all these reports, is on the outs. Is that the numbers are way down, and, well, he leans too far left. Folks, everybody on TV leans left. Give me a break. And so they're trying to figure out who's going to replace him. Is it going to be Chuck Todd, who, if you've noticed, Chuck Todd's lost weight recently? Why? That's good for TV. Joe Scarborough, kind of the right-leaning guy, Morning Joe, he's up for the job. Now, he's very dynamic. Is Chuck Todd dynamic? Well, he's well-connected. He's smart. He knows his stuff. And he doesn't lean left or right too far for anybody's taste. Joe Scarborough leans right, but he's a good-looking guy, very dynamic on TV. that plays. So if you're NBC, do you go with a more dynamic guy who's going to kind of lean right, and you can say, oh, I don't want that. But ABC's got George Stephanopoulos. He leans left. He's doing that Sunday show. So you can clearly get a partisan guy. Or do you have Micah from Morning Joe? It's an interesting, we're watching the biggest TV show, the longest running American TV show, and you know the executives at NBC are weighing all these things. Who's more dynamic? Which way do they lean? Gregory's not getting numbers. I find that stuff fascinating. Like, who do you choose? And if he's out, like many are speculating, although they have been for 2 years, and, you know, again, it's the speculation game. I'm not saying it's fact. I'm saying everybody's talking about it. If he's gone, who do you get to replace him on the longest running show at your network? Or do you go with Micah and Joe, who are great, simply because their chemistry's phenomenal? But if you do, then that other show, Morning Joe, could be toast, and that's very profitable. And I just wasted 5 minutes of your life, but I'm fascinated by that stuff. Viewership is down, Meet the Press, 43%. It's a host-driven show to a large degree. It's politics, but the host is a big part of it. You're listening to The Herd on ESPN Radio, available in the sports section on the free TuneIn Radio app. One of the things that's happened because of the Internet is there's more transparency. It's harder to for casinos. I mean, a lot of guys bet sports now, and they really know what they're doing. I mean, nobody's going to hit 70% because the books weigh in all the information as well. But there are fans now who pay attention that are very, very bright. And I've met people at this network, and occasionally you'll meet a fan, and they really do know the NBA cap. And the sad thing is they may know the NBA cap rules better than actual general managers. But I saw something yesterday, and this kind of thing drives me nuts. Drives me nuts. They were commenting about Kevin Love going to the Cavs and how much you would give up for Kevin Love. And an NBA executive said anonymously, oh, Love is so overrated. He's never won. And I'm like, dude, you're an executive. Do better than being a sports radio caller. Dude's never won. Well, the analytics tell you, and true, he has not carried his team like a LeBron to playoff success with a limited cast. But he also plays in the West, which is ridiculously, absurdly talent-heavy. But last season, the Timberwolves outscored opponents by 4.5 points per game with Love on the floor. And when he wasn't on the floor, Minnesota was outscored by 5 points a game. So when he was not on the floor, they were the Pistons. When he was on the floor, they were the Miami Heat. He's clearly a very good player, but an executive said, well, he's never won. When I hear general managers and head coaches fall into these talk radio caller cliches, it's like not every guy in these leagues is very good. There's a reason that Greg Popovich and the Spurs keep winning, because they got a bunch of good guys. And there's a reason that some franchises aren't very good. They got knuckleheads running it. But, I mean, you have to have some discernment. Tom Coughlin last 2 years is 16-16. Is he a bad coach? You know, Eagles fan was like, Andy Reid, look at his record. You mean 8-0 in Kansas City for a team that was 2-14 the year before? I'll never forget during Tebow, the winning streak. Literally, general managers and head coaches were saying, he's a winner. Really? Yeah, he won at Florida. All of Urban Meyer's quarterbacks win. At Bowling Green, at Utah, at Florida. Everybody wins under Urban Meyer. I like Mike Ditka, but I remember Mike Ditka saying about Danny Werfel when he drafted him. He's a winner. Again, under Steve Spurrier, all Florida quarterbacks were winners. So was Shane Matthews. So was Rex Grossman. Everybody under Spurrier was a winner. Mark Sanchez won 54% of his games. Tebow 56. So is Mark Sanchez a winner? You've got to have some discernment beyond winning. I mean, an average stockbroker, if the market's going crazy like it has for the last 3 years, an average stockbroker can say, yeah, look at my stocks. They're up 21%. Yeah, everybody's are up, double previous years. I remember during the housing bubble, when the housing market was just absurd, hacky real estate mortgage people who are now out of the business, they got flushed out, hacks could make $100,000. Hacks. I mean, guys that, mortgages, you don't have to have a license to be a mortgage broker. Any idiot could be a mortgage broker. You take a test, you're in. I mean, it's a harder test to take at the DMV than get a mortgage license. Every hack was making $100,000. Those guys have all been flushed out. Now you got to know what you're doing to be an efficient and successful mortgage broker. You didn't then. So you could just say, well, he's just selling a bunch of homes. Well, it depends on the market. Any stockbroker right now can look reasonably smart. How are you from 2009 to 2011? How are you then? Now, it's been on fire for 3 years. So, Steve Smith, 4 of the last 5 years, didn't make it to the playoffs in Carolina. He's a great player. Am I supposed to think less because he didn't make the playoffs? Well, what's around him? You've got to have discernment. For all you general managers out there who say, Kevin Lovey's never won, stop being radio callers. When he was on the floor, they were the Miami Heat, but when he wasn't, they were the Pistons statistically. It's called analytics. Give it a try. Maybe someday you'll be the Spurs. Coming up next, Moose Johnson and the Cowboys camp is opening. His thoughts on Michael Sam. How's it going to work in the locker room? On Tony Romo. Moose joining us next. 3 rings. The Cowboy. Everybody knows that when wearing a button-down shirt untucked, the length of the shirt is critical. Everybody knows finding that shirt that looks good untucked is tough. Trust me, I've tried. It's tough. Untuckit.com has solved the problem. They really have. Made for dudes who wear their shirts untucked. They are designed to fall at the perfect length. Doesn't matter if you're 6'2", 5'2". Take it from hockey star and brand ambassador Brad Richards of the Chicago Blackhawks. Visit Untuckit.com and improve your wardrobe today. Use promo code ESPN for a special 15% discount. That's right. Shirts can make the difference. Untuckit.com. Promo code ESPN. It's the Hurt. ESPN Radio brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Comparing rates. He's got 3 rings. Former member of the Dallas Cowboys. Now with NFL Fox. Daryl Moose Johnson joining us in the Hurt on ESPN Radio. Moose, outside of Belichick, Pete Carroll, the Harbaughs, Jason Garrett's in a pretty typical situation for most coaches. He's not going to get fired now, but if he goes 5-11, he's probably going to or be a year away from being fired. Why do you think so many coaches, outside of about 6 guys in this league, are on the verge of getting canned?
There is so much emphasis placed on winning now in the NFL that coaches always seem to be on the hot seat. And the one that I think we can all go back to is Rob Chudzinski in Cleveland. I mean, that was unbelievable for a young coach to come in and not have the time to do anything to lay the foundation for his plan. So I think that's one that shows. And there's probably unique circumstances there, but sometimes ownership just wants to go in a different direction for their own reasons. And what you hear from Jerry Jones right now is the relationship between he and Jason Garrett is as good as it's ever been between coach and owner with the Dallas Cowboys. So I think that is good news, but I think the fan base is so just striving for something beyond 8-8 that I think that he will feel that pressure tangibly during the course of the season as they go through the games from week to week. So I don't know if it's make or break, but to say that there's not a lot of pressure on what Jason does this season, I think that's an understatement.
What's a realistic prediction for 34-year-old Tony Romo coming off back surgery? I mean, isn't it time now physically to acknowledge he won't be quite as nimble?
Well, I think one of the things that Tony has always created issues with defenses is his ability to ad-lib when the play breaks down. The athleticism, his ability to throw on the move across his body, to make some of those throws that you hold your breath. And, sometimes they've worked out and sometimes they haven't. But that's always been a part of his game that has gotten Dallas out of some sticky situations or maybe sometimes put them in some tough spots. But how much of that has been diminished by the fact that he's carrying this back issue with him now? We'll have to wait and see. The age thing, looking at 34, I don't know how big that is for the quarterback. We all focus on that as a running back. What does that impact there? But having had back surgery in the past, I do know that you have to be very, very diligent about your rehab. You have to be very, very structured. And, as you're moving through that early process, that sets the foundation for the success that you're going to have. If you do your rehab and are very, very strict in the beginning coming off of surgery, then there's a good chance you're not going to have any issues. So that'll be the big thing. How did he come through that rehab? Everything I've heard down here, he looks good on the field, so we'll just have to wait and see. But it puts a lot of emphasis, on that offensive line of keeping him clean in the pocket, and so he doesn't have to make those moves out of the pocket and start to throw and rotate and do some things where he may aggravate that back.
Jerry says the defensive roster, the personnel's better than ever. You look at it. What do you see?
I'm gonna say no right now. I'll throw up some of my teams, the defensive side of the ball. We had a number one defense in the NFL. The offense got a lot of the attention, but in '92 when we won the Super Bowl, our defense was number one in the NFL. So I'll stack a couple of my groups up against what they have this year. To say it's the best one under his ownership, I'm sure I could probably pull about 5 or 6 that are probably better than the group that's going out there this year.
3 rings, Daryl Johnson, now with Fox Sports, the Herd on ESPN Radio. You're a bright guy, and football players who are smart guys generally seamlessly move to TV and radio, and you've done that. Not everybody in the locker room's smart. Not everybody in the locker room's grown up. I largely think the Michael Sam thing, everybody will get over it quickly. But do you worry at all that a few knuckleheads let's be honest, it's a frat house in those locker rooms. You've lived in them and I've been in them. Are you a little worried that some guys can't handle it initially and that they're just not mature enough?
Well, I think the big thing, I hope that everybody has realized how sensitive a topic this is when you talk about it nationally. And I applaud Jeff Fisher and the Rams organization for giving Michael Sam the opportunity to fulfill his lifelong dream. Now it's all set to the locker room itself and how do they handle this. And I think what Tony Dungy said, I think is what Jeff Fisher probably felt, that his locker room and his organization was strong enough to be able to withstand the speculation and the intention and everything that's going to happen during the course of training camp, the regular season. As this whole thing plays out, can they avoid the distractions? Can they move through their preparation with that single focus that Tony Dungy talked about? I think Jeff Fisher would only have done that if he felt confident. And you do have some talent here with the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. So, that adds another element to that defensive front with the St. Louis Rams. But as you pointed out, how is every single individual going to react to this situation? You have fingers crossed that it's going to be a great scenario, but we're talking about individuals, and we know how sometimes, one person can disrupt something.
Yeah,
so, I think that Jeff Fisher has to be very, very confident in the senior leadership in that locker room with every individual there, knowing that this is going to be a decision I made, and it's not going to be a distraction for us, because I really think if the St. Louis Rams are not in the NFC West, they're going to be a pretty tough team to deal with this year. What really hurts them is the fact that they've got to play Arizona, Seattle, and San Francisco twice. So this is a team that's on the cusp of doing some good things, and I don't think Coach Fisher would have done anything to put his team in jeopardy.
3 rings, Daryl Johnson, now with Fox, former Cowboy great. I have the Seahawks getting to the playoffs, but pulling back and being a wild card team because they lost a couple of defensive ends. When you win the Super Bowl, you got to pay some players. There is that little hangover. Take us back to your career. How hard is it to re-energize after you've been told you're the greatest in the world?
The hardest thing, for us, and one of the things that we regret is never enjoying winning that first one. So I hope that the Seattle Seahawks took the time to really enjoy what they accomplished last season before they set their sights on trying to repeat. And it is difficult. And I don't know if it's because of the old cliche that you've got a bullseye on your back and everybody wants you. It's just that your expectations of your fan base have risen now. Anything short of a Super Bowl appearance is going to be considered a disappointing season. There will be challenges, but they've got a quarterback that doesn't make the big mistake. They can run the ball effectively. I think they're still going to be very, very good defensively. They've got all the pieces there. And now it's just up to them. Can they stay healthy? Can they avoid any of the adversity that a team brings on itself? You're going to have challenges with injuries and different things that are part of the game. But if you can keep your locker room clean and you don't add adversity that was in the control of the players or the organization, then you got a great shot.
Great talking to you, Moose. Can't wait to watch you, and the NFL season's around the corner, bud.
Looking forward to it. Always a pleasure talking to you too, Colin.
Do you have tax problems? You need to call Community Tax right away. I know it's not April. Some people file later. You owe back taxes, being audited, Several years of unfiled returns? I hope that's not you. Is the IRS calling you, sending threatening letters, coming to your house or place of business? Yikes, don't deal with the IRS. They are not your friends. Call Community Tax Case. Community Tax Relief at 888-989-8647. 888-989-8647. They deal directly with the IRS for you. They've got pros, experts, dealing with the enormous bureaucracy known as the IRS. They've been doing it for years, for thousands of satisfied clients. So, right now, the people at Community Tax are standing by phones, and they're standing. They don't even want to sit. They're standing next to a big phone. 888-989-8647. 888-989-8647. Third.
The best.
It's just funny sometimes. Like, we were talking about fans' opinions. Like, fans are busy. They have lives. They have jobs. They're not supposed to be into the analytics that, like, general managers are. But I was listening. It's a prime example of you got to be careful about listening to fans, because fans want short-term results. They don't care about the big picture. I'll give you an example. Troy Tulowitzki is a really good shortstop for the Colorado Rockies, and both the Mets and the Yankees need a new shortstop. Jeter's retiring, and Tejada can't hit for the Mets. So you listen to sports radio callers, and they're like, oh, you got to get Troy Tulowitzki. Wrong. It's a terrible contract. He's 29. He'll be 30. And his numbers are elevated because he plays in Colorado. Secondly, he's missed 300 games, 2008 to 2013, with leg injuries. Troy Tulowitzki's fantastic, but he's always hurt. He is now physically having more and more issues with his legs. I think now he's on the 15-day DL. I mean, I've followed his career. He's a great hitter, but he's hitting in Colorado. He's not going to produce the same sort of numbers. And Rockies fans have always kind of said, anytime you talk about the Rockies' batting averages as a team, like Rocky fans were like, no, it's been proven that, oh, stop it. Since you came into the league in 1993, you've been first in hitting 10 times. You've never been lower than 10th. You're always one of the leading hitting teams. It's not because you have always had the best hitters. You're first this year. You were first last year in the National League. You were first the year before. You're always top 4 or 5. And by the way, am I supposed to believe you've always had horrible pitching? Which, by the way, statistically you have? No, it's hard to pitch in that stadium. It's easier to hit. You're a mile in the air. Mile High City. That's why snow burns off more quickly there than it does in Omaha. It's just an easier park to hit in. Troy Tulowitzki is not going to duplicate those numbers anywhere else he goes. I'm not going to say he's a 280 hitter from 330, but he'll probably be closer to 311, 308, and he's going to be 30. And you're stuck with 6 years at $20 million per for a guy that doesn't have any range and has leg injuries. It's a bad contract. And Sandy Alderson of the Mets, it's not hard to figure out his game plan. He is trying to assemble a very, very young team with a lot of arms. He's not giving up 4 of those guys to get Troy Tulowitzki. And the Rockies are going to want a lot of prospects. And Sandy's not going to do that because the Mets are basically one good bat away from being able to win their division next year. They got all sorts of arms. Hey, if Matt Harvey comes back and is great, which I think he probably will be, then they got a great young staff. I mean, it's young, but they really have a chance next year to be interesting, but they need a stick. I mean, basically everybody in baseball needs a stick. The Mariners are good. They need a stick. Outside of the A's, everybody needs another stick. Maybe outside of the Dodgers and the A's. But, Troy Tulowitzki is a great example of fans who are like, yeah, bad contract, bad wheels, bad age, and elevated stats based on the stadium. That's just a bad fan call to a radio station. Yeah, get Troy Tulowitzki, he's great. Hey, Yankees, if you had any farm system, you wouldn't have to worry about a 30-year-old shortstop who can't stay healthy. He's missed 300 games between 2008 and 2013. 300. He's now on the DL. Tremendous. I mean, he's one of the best shortstops in the last decade. No question. But those numbers in Colorado, go look at the team batting average for the Rockies the last 15 years. You think the elevation doesn't help their hitting and hurt their pitching a little? Jake, you're in the herd on ESPN Radio. We talked about golf and the numbers dying, Dick's Sporting Goods laying off PGA guys, golf magazines, golf ratings. Jake, go ahead. Fire on.
Hey, Colin. I work in the golf course and sports turf consulting industry, and the trends that you said is absolutely correct. Our business has slowed in the golf course industry due to the lack of renovating and rebuilding of golf courses. They've elected just to close them because they're not as profitable as they used to.
What is the average golf course? What kind of money does it make? An average nice public course, does it make money or lose?
Well, I'm not in that end. Well, they pretty much break even. I'm not in that end. I'm on the end of the construction phase. So, like, the average municipal golf course costs anywhere from $2 to $5 million to build, just depending on where it's at.
Yeah.
And they generally try to get a return in about 3 to 5 golf seasons. So, I'm not sure on the financial end how long it takes for them to actually recoup their money, but I do know how much they cost to build.
Yeah. Jake, we got to run up against the clock. Thank you, sir. Yeah, golf is. There's no. I'm not saying this happily or gleefully. Golf's in big trouble. It is rolling down the hill fast. And Tiger was the duct tape that kept it together. Whether it's economy, I think it's the pace. The culture's changed. We don't go to golf courses as young golfers for 6 hours and leave our family. Last hour coming up, The Herd. It's The Herd on ESPN Radio, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests via the Subway Fresh Steak Hotline, simulcast on ESPNU. Hey, by the way, Friday, Colin's new football show, which isn't so new anymore. We're having kind of a preseason special, 30-minute preseason special. Could be more. Is it 30 minutes or an hour? I think it's 30 minutes. It's going to be real fun. We're bringing the show back this year. A lot of my West Coast followers could not watch it because it was 6 a.m. West Coast time. DVR it. It's a fun show. We talk fantasy. We talk gambling. We talk college. None of these football shows on Sunday morning give college football any love. We do, but it's still primarily NFL. Chad Millman comes on. We talk gambling and lines, and the show's fun. And we have a really smart staff. We retweak some things this year. I really, really like the way the show's going this year. So this Friday, there'll be a special. I think it's ESPN2 at 7:30. 7:30 ESPN2. Set your DVR. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. We'll have a cage confessional. Perhaps some of you have seen those cage confessionals where we get people uncomfortably close, celebrity football people. Nick Saban just did one the other day. He was very, very funny, actually. Speaking of college football, you know, we're about a month out from the season starting. And let me first of all say that college football has done an amazing job to create their selection committee. Now, this will be the first year of a college football playoff. I don't think you could have done better. You got 2 Rhodes Scholars, Oliver Luck and Pat Hayden. You have a recently retired superintendent of the United States Air Force, athletic directors, Archie Manning. You have Tom Osborne, who was in the House of Representatives. Condoleezza Rice, professor of political science at Stanford. You just have really, really quality people. These are highly successful, highly educated people. Now, you're not going to get people that don't have connections. By the time people get to be 55 years old and they're successful, they play in a very unique sphere and a very elite sphere. Barry Alvarez obviously has a history in the Big Ten. Troy Aikman has a history with the Cowboys. You know that when you hire him to be an analyst. But you hope he understands his money comes from being at least reasonably objective, and I think he is. I think he's as good as we have in the industry. So, you know, you're going to get fans whining, but fans are never nearly as objective as the people they're criticizing. That committee is damn good. It is a committee full of highly successful, highly accomplished Americans. There's diversity of age, diversity of gender. I love it. I think it's great. And by the way, Condoleezza Rice never played football. You've never hosted a radio show. You lecture me on how to do mine every day. Be quiet. So websites now have said Florida State is the favorite to repeat as a national champion this year. Bovada says Florida State's the favorite. It's going to be very interesting for this selection committee. This is the year, folks. Watch these games carefully, because even though the odds have Alabama and Florida State, they name all the teams. The best teams aren't necessarily the ones that are going to get in. The teams, to me, that have a huge advantage are Ohio State and Michigan State. Because the Big Ten, I'll give you an example. Ohio State's football schedule. There is one game they won't be favored in by a touchdown this year, at Michigan State. I mean, there's just Maryland, Cincinnati, Kent State, Navy, Penn State, Illinois, Indiana. 9 of these are rollovers. Meanwhile, Michigan State has to go to Oregon, but outside of their Ohio State game, they'll be favored in every game. It's a lot different for Auburn. Auburn is significantly better than Ohio State. Sorry, Buckeye fans. Right now, they are. Your defense is not even close to stopping that kind of an offense. Alabama couldn't. Florida State couldn't. Florida State's got 9 NFL guys starting on their defense. They couldn't stop Auburn. You're not. Look at Auburn's schedule. At Kansas State, LSU, South Carolina, Texas A&M, at Georgia, at Alabama. One of their easy games is at Ole Miss. Yeah, easy. That doesn't count the SEC championship game. So, this is not a shot at the Big Ten. It's just the reality of the SEC. I could make an argument last year that the SEC's 4 bottom bowl teams, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, those were their 4 worst bowl teams. They all won, most by a rout. Meanwhile, many of the better Big Ten teams lost their bowl games. Iowa lost theirs. Minnesota lost theirs. Michigan lost theirs. Wisconsin lost theirs. And they didn't have as many bowl teams. It's just a different conference. Of the 260 guys drafted in the NFL, SEC had double the number. And they are dominating in the first couple of rounds of the NFL draft. So it's just a better conference. So I would have no problem if Auburn lost 2 games and they were nail-biters on the last play, I'd have no problem putting them into the Final Four. But if Michigan State loses 1 game, I'm not putting them in because they've only got 2 toughies. At Oregon and Ohio State. They got to win those games. So just a 1-loss Big Ten team I'm not putting in. It's nothing against the Big Ten. But when you go look at Auburn's schedule, it is absurd. In the last 7 weeks, in order, they face South Carolina, at Ole Miss, Texas A&M, at Georgia, at Alabama in the SEC championship. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I will say this, we know. Now, I don't think that the chasm between the SEC and the Big 12 is enormous. I think the Big 12's best can play with the SEC's best mostly. I mean, let's face it, Missouri and Texas A&M went from the Big 12 into the SEC and have done very well with Big 12 players. So I don't think there's a huge gap, SEC, Big 12. I don't. I think there's a gap, but it's not huge. I don't think the gap between the SEC and the Pac-12 is huge. I don't. There's a gap. I don't think it's huge, especially now USC is kind of getting past all the scholarship stuff. Oregon, Stanford, these are good teams. UCLA's now rolling. They got 4 legitimate NFL-filled teams. But the Big Ten, if you look at recruiting, Ohio State's getting the majority of their NFL players. And I think Bo Pelini's a great coach at Nebraska, but they're limited. In 2014, they're limited. Kids now, cold weather schools, it can be tough to get guys unless you have an elite recruiter like Urban Meyer or the guy James Franklin at Penn State, who I really, really think will eventually. It's going to take them some years, but they're going to get that puppy rolling. You're in the herd, Brian. Go ahead.
Yeah, I listen to you, and I agree with most of the time with you, but the satisfaction that we got to get here in the Big Ten is we're up north where it's cold all the time.
Yeah.
We're more of a ground and pound team, where the SEC is speed and throw the ball. So, yeah, 9 times out of 10 we go down south and play in the bowl games. We lose because we're more ground and pound and run instead of air the ball out with speed all the time. We got to build for where we live in.
I'm not denying that, but it's always been cold in the Big Ten. The difference is the game has changed, and you haven't changed with the game. That's you may be right, but the game has changed. Speed wins now. No huddles, spacing. It's not about ground and pound. You got to spread it out and get speed. And I'll give you
geographically, we can't do anything about that.
Well, you're right. That's why you have over 10 years eroded. I agree. There's nothing you can unless you have an unbelievable ability in the Big Ten to put together a staff of great recruiters, and you can lure kids from Georgia, Texas, California, which I think Ohio State's doing, and I think the Penn State guy can do. But The reality is the game is changing. Speed wins now, and the Big Ten has less speed. That's you can see in the draft.
One question. What's the chances, like what they did the Super Bowl this year, that why don't they put some bowl games up north, and then we can use our ground and pound against their airing it out during the snowstorm,
well,
and then we'll see who wins.
Nobody wants to do that because you don't want to put bowl games in a blizzard.
They do it with the Super Bowl. They got lucky with.
Yeah, they got lucky with, and it's one game. You don't want 7 bowls in a snowdrift. Because bowl games are all about attracting people to go to games. Who's going to fly from Texas to Ohio and sit outdoors? But it's much easier to get a guy in Ohio to go down to Florida and play golf for 4 days, have some cocktails, and watch a game in the sun.
I'll go with that. I mean,
yeah, of course you will, because it's right. Yeah, you'll go with that because it's right. Yeah, I mean, it's just, and by the way, even if you played up north, you'd still play indoors. You'd play at the RCA Dome. That's a carpet. Speed would still win. I'm not saying the Big Ten doesn't have good teams. I'm saying is when you're on that committee now, speed is the name of the game, and the SEC and the Big 12 and the Pac-12, they are faster conferences. And the Big Ten's got some players, but you got to evolve. That's why James Franklin's such a great hire by Penn State. He's a great recruiter. You got to convince guys, oh, it's beautiful up here, I swear. That snowdrift is just in a brochure. It doesn't exist. It's beautiful up here all the time. Coming up next, Morgan Freeman, John Gruden, Barack Obama, John Madden, and Robin Williams, all in studio with Frank Caliendo. If you don't have a will, the court may dictate what happens to your property and minor children. Don't let that happen. It's National Make-A-Will Month. Call or visit LegalZoom.com today for special pricing on wills and living trusts. LegalZoom has been helping people protect their families for 13 years. Don't forget, enter my name, Colin, in the referral box. Protect your family and future at LegalZoom. They provide self-help services. They're not a law firm, though. National Make-A-Will Month. Call or visit LegalZoom today. Pricing on wills, pricing on living trusts. Special this month. It's The Herd. Welcome back to Herd on ESPN Radio. Celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, or even just because. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN for special deals on flowers and gifts starting at $29.99. The best and worst of Frank Caliendo, Friday night, 7 Eastern on ESPN2, or on ESPN, excuse me. My show's on at 7:30 on ESPN2, as we're doing kind of a preseason introduction to our show again, which had a very successful first year. So, Frank, my first job out of college, you're an impersonator, but a comedian, first and foremost. So my first job out of college was in Las Vegas. And there was a guy named Finis Henderson.
Finis Henderson, yeah.
Yes, he was an impersonator. I don't know what he's doing now. There was Rich Little.
Mm-hmm.
Impersonators generally have an arc. You don't so far. You've been around now for...
Well, one of the things, you use the word impersonator. I think of what I do is impressions. I think of an impersonator as a person who dresses up more and tries to act out like the person, like the Cher impersonator.
But you do look like Gruden, and it's funny.
I know. I mean, that's kind of the weird thing that I kind of walk those two worlds because I'm doing sketches. Yeah. And when I'm doing the sketches, it is, I guess you're right, it's like an impersonation because it's in that sketch. On stage, I always thought of myself as the person who's a comedian / impressionist or something like that, because I just like to go from voice to voice. And one of the things about that it's great that you brought that point up, because the arc of the impressionist or impersonator, whatever you want to call him, but they were very vaudevillian. Rich Little, John Biner, it's like turn around and now I'm Jack Parr or something like that. For the audience who doesn't know, that was pre-Johnny Carson. Sure. But that's what they would do, is they would turn around and be the person. To me, I always thought it was better to have a setup, explain what the person was about. I wanted to do observational comedy, but about these people. So, for example, with a sports guy, John Gruden, he's so positive. I mean, you remember the touchdownception game, Seattle Seahawks, Green Bay Packers, replacement refs. Everybody is ripping the refs to shreds, but Gruden did it in a positive way. I'll tell you what, man, these refs... These are the best bad refs I've ever seen in my entire life, man. I've never seen anybody so good at being bad. I'm not talking about participant ribbon bad. I'm talking about bowling trophy bad, man. Like a piano could fall on him. And that, if it happened to us, we get hurt. A piano fell on John Gruden. I'll tell you what, man, that piano fell on me. That hurt a little bit, but it sounded pretty cool. My sinuses are cleared.
So you're trying to go from a moment of something funny the person does and it's almost newsworthy.
Right.
Like some criticize Gruden for being too positive. A lot of TV critics are like, John's too positive.
And I like it because it's the opposite of what most people are doing. And he doesn't care. When I first met him, I'm like, that's what I love about you is when he comes up with the references. The references are so crazy sometimes because he doesn't even know them. It's like he's on a game show talking it out, like on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or something. And used up all his lifelines. He'll be like, I'll tell you what, man, that play by Johnny Manziel right there, that play was magical, man. What's the name of that school Harry Potter went to, Hogwarts? I'll tell you what, I don't care if you're Minerva, McGonagall, Albus Dumbledore, Severus Snape, you're Harry Potter. You're pretty good at the game of Quidditch, man.
So he's making stuff up.
Right, but he gets there. He gets there and gets to what he's looking for.
When you do an impersonation, like obviously you have to listen to reams of tape or like how long do you listen before you try?
I used to listen tons. And now what I do a lot of times is I try them on the radio and I try them with friends and go back and forth. I got friends who do some, we almost workshop impressions a lot of the time. We hang out and do those kinds of things. The first thing you find is a cadence to me. Robert Downey Jr., ever since Iron Man, he is Tony Stark. He talks like a human Twitter feed, little phrases, and turns everything to being about himself. So you could be giving out an Academy Award, but these people deserve your applause almost as much as I do. #awesome.
That's how he talks now?
That's how he does all the time.
Now, when Madden, to me, what you did with Madden is, when I watch you, I think you embellish the person's personality. You're like almost a cartoonist, where Jay Leno's chin is now enormous. Like John Madden, to me, is actually very accurate. Now, initially, he didn't love it. But what you did is, he kind of just...
I got bored with it. I got bored with doing the John Madden impression. I tried to change it into a bigger character. So the real John Madden, when John Madden talks, is kind of just lumbering through it. You get it. You're talking about the things that you're talking about. But if you do that in a sketch, it's not as funny. The first time, it's like, gosh, that's amazing. Then you're just seeing it. So what I turned it into was this guy's like, it's unbelievable. I don't have to say words anymore. That's what you're talking about.
But that's, to me, that's why it probably works. First of all, it sounds just like him. But to a large degree, I always argued, if you wrote down what John Madden said, it was mostly that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the funny sounds. I mean, I watched Dana Carvey. Dana Carvey is one of my favorites. And he was a guy who, if you watch for precision, Darrell Hammond, I think, is probably the greatest that's ever been. Darrell Hammond nails voices 100%. He doesn't really try to cartoon them. He finds little things, and he amplifies them just enough that you pay attention to them.
He's a subtlest.
Yes. But then you go and you watch Dana Carvey, it becomes a caricature cartoon. And I wanted to be in the middle, because Carvey, I thought, had that. I thought Darrell Hammond had that. I don't know if I could even do some as good as Hammond does. So I wanted to have my own thing, which was try to be silly, but not over-the-top crazy silly. So...
Are there people you've just said I can't do?
Absolutely, all the time.
No, what? Like somebody once, everybody did Keith Jackson. Everybody does Vince Scully. How do you do Bob Costas? There's some guys that don't have an affectation. They don't.
You don't think they do, but sometimes they do. They have their own personal dialect.
Like Berman's been here forever. What is it? What's Berman like?
You try to get to be, first of all, with the hands, you play paper football. Field goal, no field goal. Say all the vowels.
That's exactly what he does.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter what the words are. Like a person that nobody thought I could do was Adam Schefter. Schefter talks in little phrases. According to my sources, at this particular time, it appears Tom Brady's yawn during pregame warmups was in fact just a yawn. And earlier reports that there was some sort of oxygen deprivation disorder highly exaggerated. If you need any more information, I'll be right here in front of my bookcase, ready to go.
How about one that you have to do? I don't know if you do it, but I can't imagine you couldn't do Lou Holtz.
Lou Holtz came from Mike Ditka. I was doing Ditka. I was like, I got to be honest with you, I don't even understand what you're talking about there. And then it slowly became Lou Holtz. That's what we're talking about is football. Football is a game that we all have grown up playing. And when I was at Notre Dame, it was one of the most fantastic times of my entire life. I was at South Carolina. We enjoyed ourselves. But Mark May and I now go head-to-head, toe-to-toe, whatever you want to say.
How did you get that from Ditka?
Because it was that. Ditka was that. I got to be honest with you, it slowly slurred out and it became a little bit more like Lou Holtz.
So go from Ditka to Lou.
We're talking about. That's what they were talking about. I'm just sitting here chewing my gum and just kind of slowly, there it becomes that. It's like Ted Koppel. Here's a better one. Ted Koppel and John Madden are very close.
Oh, they are?
You can go George W. Bush to Tara Bradshaw to Chris Rock, and they're not even that far away. You wouldn't think that they are, but it's just putting a little bit more energy in each one.
So Ted Koppel's who?
Ted Koppel. Good evening, I'm Ted Koppel.
That is so good.
And then you bring it down, and it just gets a little more glottal, and it becomes John Madden. I mean, you wouldn't think it would, but it just did right there.
Charles Barkley, I was doing Barkley for an international audience,
and I was talking like this. That's what it is all. Colin, I was watching this show the other day. Yeah. It was very, very good. I was trying to figure out where you're looking. When I see on television, you're always looking out with those dead eyes out at the producers or something like that. It's very scary to me.
But somebody's like, I didn't know who he was because they were from an international audience. This is a few years ago, too. And they're like, but it sounds like Muhammad Ali. And I realized it is.
I'm the greatest of all time.
It's it's similar. You know,
that is
in there.
Is, you know, obviously some of it's geographical. If you're from the South or Baltimore, you may have, are accents easier or tougher?
I think it helps because it helps to sell it. You know, Kuiper, when I got Kuiper came from, it's not only the cadence, but there's a little bit of Baltimore in there. You try to figure it out. The word out should only have one syllable. It has multisyllabic connotation. And he talks like that all the time. He called me one time after I did him the first time. Everybody thought he hated me, and he loved it. He's like, this Caliendo saw you, the entire Kuiper family, watching the living room. He did a fantastic job, tremendous ability. Want to get your hand size, figure out what's going on right there. Take a look at the combine. He's the comedian combine. Go to Vegas, going to see Blue Man Group. You ever been out there? They do a tremendous job. You got all the toilet paper, those little signs. Incredible stuff. You ever see him swing the ductwork? Very nice job.
He does. I think, I got to tell you something. Your Schefter's unbelievable. Like, I'd never heard that.
Well, Schefter, and Schefter still has this on his voicemail. I called Schefter, and this was actually the opposite. I called Schefter as Jay Glazer. And, I called Schefter as Jay Glazer. I'm like,
you're not going to believe this. I've got some information on Mark Whitten. You're not going to believe what just went on. This is some of the craziest stuff I've ever heard in my entire life. Give me a call back.
And Schefter's like, why would Jay call? You know, they're friends, but they're you know, at times they're competing against who's to get the best story, right? So it was one of those things, and I'm swearing on the phone and just and stuff, and Schefter's like trying to figure out what the heck's going on here, and meanwhile, all the executives, not the highest level executives, but some of the executives are just giggling with me like schoolgirls, like.
By the way,
Schefter, great sport, by the way, about it. Loved, ended up having fun with
Jay Glazer sounds like Al Pacino.
Yeah, very close. That's how Jay Glazer
is somewhere in here. Al Pacino becomes a little bit higher and a little bit raspier. There it is. Find it.
You bring it down, it becomes Chris Berman.
Yeah. Favorite hand football.
There it is.
Frank Caliendo, by the way, the best and worst, Friday night, 7 Eastern on ESPN. Now, you've attempted me before. I don't have a lot of these things.
I don't have the voice. I think we talked about it a couple of times. I think you've actually changed it a little bit because your wife even said the same thing. You would affirm everything that you've said. You say, NBA players are freaks. They are. They just are. And then you said that to your wife, and she's like, she said, my wife, when I met you, one time I was sitting there in the hallway, and she said, my wife doesn't do that. She did.
Yeah, that's what she does do. It tends to be, even Rick Riley came to me. He goes, you affirm everything you say. And I say, I have 3 hours to fill. If you don't have affirmation, you have like a 45-minute show.
Right. It becomes part of it, and it becomes your cadence. And that's what, with President Obama,
he talks slow at the beginning and speeds up at the end. It's always 2 parts. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6, 7.
Be great teaching your phone number.
867-5309.
That's Janny's number. You bet it is. You know, like
Bill Clinton, fairly. Do you drop them ever? Like you said, you got tired of Madden.
I mean, I'll still throw them out there. Not on TV. I try not to do Madden on television. I don't really want to.
He didn't like it initially.
No, and then he met me, and it turned around a little bit. When you meet people, they tend to figure out who you are and stuff.
Do you
like
do Larry King?
I think I probably could do a decent Larry King. It would be great.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I have no problem doing bad impressions.
Give me give me one more Berman. That's really good.
You know, we understand. Say what you will, Colin. I understand that you work here as well, but this is one of those guys.
The one that's been really killing too lately is Morgan Freeman, because you can just say anything.
And that's when the audience realized that no one was sure what was going on. Truth of the matter was, Frank was just going from voice to voice. Eventually, he'd have a topic he'd settle on. But for this time, that was never going to happen.
That is unbelievable.
It's pretty amazing.
Frank Caliendo, the best and worst of Frank, Friday night, 7 Eastern on ESPN. Back in a second, The Herd on ESPN Radio.
Sure.
Welcome back to Herd on ESPN Radio. Last night, go to frankonstage.com. Frank Caliendo, if you want to see his dates, frankonstage.com. Last night's MVP, Bartolo Colon, took a perfect game into the seventh inning, getting the win. Brought to you by Sport Clips. Client appreciation at Sport Clips. Get a double MVP haircut. Price of one. July 31st it ends. I'll tell you, I read this story. You know how there's like jobs out there, and you think they're a great job, and there's no perfect job, I guess. Like I always thought a great job would be to write movies. But let's be honest. You may have one that gets purchased every 6 years. There are very few people that write movies. And increasingly, if stuff doesn't blow up, nobody wants to make your movie. It's bad. You can't. Smart people have been kind of forced out or forced to sort of reinvent what they do in Hollywood because, there's not a lot of stuff that calls for Jeremy Irons. It's basically Robert Downey Jr. and blow stuff up. And Robert Downey Jr. is great, but, that's what Hollywood's becoming. I saw the lead. I complained about this, lamented this yesterday. Like, I'm 50 now, and I just like funny movies. Smart, funny movies, good dialogue, witty people. Like the TV show Modern Family. It's just smart and funny, makes me laugh. It's a good show. And the newest movie is something about a storm and airliners into the storm, and it shows a bunch of airliners and a tornado, and I'm like, yep, not me. Not for all I know, this company produced it, but it's like, not me. I'm not going to watch that. Yeah, like, take my kids to that. They're going to freak out. Great. Like all these movies they make about airlines going down, well, they're actually going down now. I don't need more movies about it, okay? I'm not interested. But there's always been jobs that, like, you think are great. Like, ooh, I want to be a chef. Dude, believe me, I'm close to that industry. My wife was in the hospitality business. My son's going to CIA. Know a lot of people in the industry. You don't make as much as you think, and the hours are daunting. And there's a lot of headaches in being a chef. Guys always joke about a gynecologist. Believe me, Elle McPherson's not walking through that door. Play-by-play guys. Ooh, I'd love to be the voice of the blank. They live in hotels. If you're a baseball play-by-play guy, that is a lonely, lonely existence. And what if you get a bad team for 9 years? And what if you don't golf? Like, I did play-by-play out of college, baseball. I don't golf a ton because I was in the Pacific Coast League, and a lot of the road trips were Phoenix and Tucson, and it's too hot. You're just sitting in hotel rooms all day. It can get very, very depressing. There's a job open right now, and really talented people are passing on it. It's the baseball commissioner job. And Bud Selig's going to retire in 6 months after, 16 years being the commissioner. And everybody wants basically Steve Greenberg to take the job. Steve Greenberg is the son of Hank Greenberg, the former great baseball player, Hall of Famer. And Steve Greenberg went to Yale. He created the Classic Sports Network, which became ESPN Classic. He created college sports TV that was sold for $500 million. He's got all the money, went to Yale, played baseball for 5 years. Dad was a Hall of Famer. Everybody wants him to have the job. And he's like, no, thank you. He's like, I know what it's like. It's 24/7, 365-day schedule. The 3 years I spent in the commissioner's office was absolutely exhausting. No, thank you. This is not a job. Right now, the baseball commissionership is wide open, and there's not a lot of people that want it. They're going to hire somebody in the office who's going to be the same old, and they're not going to speed the game up. It's a very difficult job where you inherit a rigid, uncompromising set of owners, players, and unions. Look how long it took for replay. It is a tough job. The NFL commissioner is not as tough. The league's growing. You've got your concussion issue, but you got lawyers to take care of that. You also have owners who are willing to change and evolve daily. The NFL has always seen itself as number two. It's never been called the national pastime. So there's always been a culture in the NFL. Let's change stuff. Let's tweak our rules. They'll do it mid-season. They're very flexible. So for an NFL commissioner, you're dealing with flexible players and owners and rules committee. Just the opposite in baseball. The NBA has also been a league that has always been willing to come up with new ideas. In fact, there's a saying in sports among executives that the NBA comes up with it first, the NFL does it better, and baseball makes the most money on it. because baseball seasons are longer, there's more games, there's greater inventory. They'll always make great money in baseball because they have so many games to sell, and it runs unopposed in the summer. But I think it's a tough job. I think it's all these commissioner jobs, the hours are stressful. But when you look at the culture of the sport, it's declining in popularity. The games are getting longer, and the people are uncompromising. A very rigid set of owners. I mean, Mark Cuban wanted to own a team. No, thanks. I mean, no, Mark Cuban? Really? No, thanks. So it's very interesting. Rob Manfred's going to get the gig, and I'm certainly sure he's qualified, but he's an in-house guy. And Joe Torre was up for it, and he's an in-house guy. They've wanted Bob Costas, but Bob's not conciliatory. He's not going to bend over backwards. I don't think Bob wants to work that hard. He's got a pretty cushy schedule and good income. I just don't think he wants it. I think he could be capable. I don't know if he has much of a business background or acumen there, but in the end, he's not going to suck up to people. That's not his personality. Joe Torre, I think, would be fine, but he, again, is old-school baseball. Bud Selig, the complaint, he's too old-school baseball. So, it's a $25 million a year gig, but if you're Steve Greenberg and you've got that Yale degree and you've got your private equity and you've got your money and the ability to make it that way, why give your life up? And by the way, then have 30 bosses who basically tell you what to do. No thanks. Who are historically inflexible. Yeah, I know what it's like to have 30 bosses who are inflexible. Hello! Got tax problems? They want to call community tax right away. That's what they do. They solve tax problems. Have you failed to file returns? Owe back taxes? Being audited? Well, is the IRS calling you? Sending threatening letters? Ew, come into your house from business? Yikes. Why don't you talk to the pros at Community Tax Relief? Call them right now. 888-989-8647. They deal directly with the IRS. Okay, the IRS is not your friends. Folks at Community Tax are. They're standing by to help you now. 888-989-8647. Don't screw around with the IRS. If you're being audited, you owe back taxes, you didn't file returns, get on it. If you call in the next hour, you'll get half off your tax investigation. Half off. That's up to a $250 value. Don't wait. Call now. Half off. Community Tax solves tax problems. It's the Herd. To have you in, get to Subway, enter the galaxy of fresh for your chance to win free subs, movie tickets, and more. Subway, where winners eat. I like that movie. What's that track called? That's a hot track.
Rock the mic.
That goes with my fresh, hot sports take. Yeah, I need that on my iPod. Get me that fresh, hot track. Get me that on vinyl. Hot licks, hot track, hot pancake. I'm stupid. So James Harden says, Dwight and I are the cornerstones of the Rockets. The rest of the guys are just role players. That's his quote today. Yeah, Chandler Parsons. He was looking for bulletin board material for next year. There you go. I'm not a big James Harden guy. I'm not a big Dwight guy. Great players, but Dwight's immature. That's why stars don't want to play with him. That's a fact. I mean, I've heard that from like 7 different people, that he's goofy and he's not all in. He's not all in. I think he's a good player, but a lot of players don't want to play with him. It's what I said about Kobe Bryant. I like Kobe. I think he's a great player. But, when guys keep passing you up like Carmelo Anthony, how many guys have to say no? Well, everybody loves to play with Carmelo. Then why won't they play with him? Oh, she's a really nice girl. She got a great personality. Why can't you get a date? I mean, after a while, I don't want to hear excuses. Stuff happens for a reason. Stuff doesn't happen for a reason. All these guys, Shaq left Kobe. Gasol left Kobe. I mean, after a while, Dwight left Kobe. After a while, there's the proof. Carmelo and Kobe, very similar ball-centric ISO guys on a wing, need the rock. A lot of guys don't want to play with them. James Harden's another guy that, James needs the ball. He's not going to help you on the defensive end. You don't have to be a great defensive player. Charles Barkley wasn't a great defensive player. You got to make an effort. Like James Harden is just, he's not even into it. You got to give me an effort. You don't have to be Dwayne Wade in his prime or, You know, John Stockton was a pretty good defender. I mean, Magic Johnson wasn't, but he gave you a little bit of an effort. Like Harden sometimes, you're not even interested in trying. 2 for the road.
Here's one for the road.
You think we need one more?
Better make it 2.
All right, we'll get one more.
2 for the road. In the herd.
A dating site now matches users by their DNA. That's essential for compatibility. SingledOut.com mails users a DNA testing kit. You submit saliva. It's tested at a lab for the presence of 2 genetic markers. And basically, if your spit matches, forget eHarmony, you have a chance for instant chemistry. SingledOut.com. And this is sort of bad news. According to research by Richard Doty, he's the director of the University of Pennsylvania's Smell and Taste Center. Your ability to smell peaks by age 40, all downhill from there. After 60, you can't smell squat. 60% of people between 65 and 80 have major impairment. More than 80% after 80. Men are more impaired than women, and smokers fare worse than non-smokers. If you're a smoker and you're like 84, I could put my armpit right up to your face and you'd be like roses. You can't even tell. Tomorrow, Teddy Bruschi from Patriots camp, Stanford coach David Shaw. Good stuff, man. Great to be here today. Give me that fresh vinyl track. I like that. I could drop it like it's hot, man. It's a hot vinyl track to go along with my fresh, hot sports tape and my stack of pancakes with berries at 8:45 on the hot track. That is so dope. See you in the herd tomorrow, hot track.